crafty, you decided to bring your talents and your personal business to YouTube. So I hope you think that that wasn't going to come with any questions, any pushback, or any feedback. Because the YouTube Counseling Committee has a lot. So we want to start out, we have a few questions. We know you want to get into part 3 of your story, and people have been asking you, where's part 3? So we just want to get it clear that we know that there is your side of the story, there's their side of the story, and then in between, there's the truth. We have a few questions before you begin. We want to know more about the church situation. Was that your church or was it his church? All right, so as far as the church is concerned, it was a church that we both started. So he had started a church in Georgia, and when he moved here, which he pretty much abandoned that church, and that should have been a sign, but he moved here and he wanted to start a church, so we actually started that church together. In part 2, you made a reference to just receiving support from people and mental illness, and how can you elaborate on that so we can understand more so what you meant by that? What is the mental illness? As far as abusive situations, we usually look at abuse as far as being physical abuse or even sexual abuse. However, financial and mental abuse in relationships occur all the time. And my situation was a little bit of both. He was so manipulative and playing so many mind games. When I would question situations or things he would say, he would blame it on someone else, people who he seemed to be close with. And so I was pretty unsure, like, okay, well, I knew he was lying, but I couldn't imagine that a man of God who has committed to marriage would be so manipulative and so conniving and so divisive. Even within the house with us and the kids together, he would pit us against each other. As far as the church, he pit the members against me. He would talk about me with the members, and there was one member in particular, she was very disrespectful to me, and I could tell that she did not care for me at all, and he had me thinking that it was my stepdaughter going and telling her different things about me when in fact it was him. The financial abuse, he just lied about everything. Like at the beginning, he told me, I have myself together, and he had absolutely nothing together. He would hide money. He would tell me he was going to preach someplace and he was getting money, or he was getting less than what they said. One time he was going to a friend's church, and usually most of his friends, like his very, very close friends or people who think that they're his close friends or brothers, they would give him $1,000. And he would come home and he would tell me, oh, they didn't give me anything. Oh, they only gave me $200. And I realized that that was a lie. It's just those mind games, like it can have you doubting yourself, you're not sure. And I still deal with a lot of that because I don't want to trust anybody anymore, ever. Like, I'm questioning everything that people say to me, and that is not how we are supposed to live this life. And he does take advantage of people who are trusting. He looks for those. He looks for people who he feels that he's smarter than, that he can manipulate. And those are the people that he likes to stick to until you figure him out. Okay, so clearly we know that communication is a big deal in relationships. And so we would like to know what issue caused the lack of communication, and was that what caused everything to transpire? what caused the lack of communication. So we were communicating just fine at the beginning. He was pretty much telling me all types of things. But when I realized that everything that he was telling me was a lie, that's when I started losing complete trust in him. And one of the biggest things that I told him, or two of the biggest things that I told him that would be a deal breaker in a relationship for me is poor communication, and the biggest one is trust. Because if I don't trust you, then I can't be open around you. And I don't feel like you are protecting me. Okay. And being in a marriage, and marriage is two people, it takes both of you to make it work, and you have to have God in the midst. What did you do to help your spouse get better or to try and improve your relationship? How did you improve it? What actions did you take? He did not want help. And that's the thing that we always have to remember. In order for you to help someone, they have to want the help. He did not want any help. I suggested counseling, and I let him find a counselor, considering that, you don't really want all your business out there. I did not want to tell anybody everything that was going on. And so he found a Christian based counselor. We went to 2 sessions of counseling, and then he refused to go back to counseling. And that was because the counselor was pretty much like, don't you see how she feels? Like, she does not feel protected. He did not, anytime anyone says anything against what he wants, or if he's unable to manipulate them, then he has to cut them off. He does not want to deal. He is going to block you. He is going to not answer your phone calls. He does not care about your feelings. And at that point, he refused to go back. We had just gone through a fire, had an electrical fire, and of course, I'm taking care of everything. Insurance covered a certain portion of it. But if y'all ever been in that situation, you know that insurance never gives you enough, especially when you're actually fixing your house. So we had an electrical fire. He was out of town. It was just me and the kids. And for somebody who felt like I was mean to his kids or didn't want to be bothered with his kids, he sure left the kids with me 90% of the time while he was off traveling or doing whatever it is that he was doing. So we were in the house. We had an electrical fire. And of course, we had to get out. He was out of town. He did not show back up home. He did not come back until 3 days later. And I was just flabbergasted by the whole situation. I'm like, your family has just been in a fire. We're staying at a hotel. Of course, I'm making sure that we're good, and you are nowhere around. When you come home, you have a hotel to go to. So we were in a hotel for about 2 months. And after that, during the time we were in a hotel, there was a church service that he had to have in Georgia. And I did not go to the church service because I'm living out of a hotel. I'm trying to get us back into the house. And if you all know, there's permits that need to be pulled. You have to have inspections. So I'm doing all of that. He did not put a dime in to help with anything in the house. But when he went up to the church service, he had to rent him a BMW to go to the church service. Of course, I didn't find that out until he came back in this car, because he has to put on the front. He has to act like he has it all together. And we were still in a hotel. We were in a hotel for 2 months. So at that point, I did not, the trust was gone. I did not feel secure in my relationship. I did not feel protected. I realized that me or the kids were not a priority of his. And that's pretty much when it was a no-go for me. He told me that he owned his house in Georgia, and that is why he couldn't pay any, too many of the bills here. He couldn't pay anything here because he wanted to keep the house, and I was all on board. Sure, go ahead. We'll have 2, houses. When the kids get older, they'll have a place that they can go to if they don't want to stay in Florida anymore. Perfect. Y'all, 2 years into it, the cousin calls him on his phone, and of course, like I said before, he likes to have people on speakerphone, and the cousin is just like, oh, you haven't paid rent in like a year or a long time. I don't know how she let the house sit like that, but he hadn't paid. And I'm just like, come to find out, he was renting. He had been renting that house all those years prior. It was not his house. The lie he told me, oh no, it's a rent to own. They, I don't know if they still do rent to owns. I don't know. If they do, y'all let me know. Maybe I'll get a little less annoyed about that situation. But he was like he was doing a rent to own, and I'm just like, they still do that? But that was his lie. Come to find out, it wasn't his house. And the sad part is that he did not even go back to get anything out of the house. The kids still had things in that house that belonged to them. They had things in that house that belonged to their mother. And he did not bat an eye when the lady was like, she's going to have to rent it to somebody else. He did not go and try to get anything. It's like when he's done with the situation, he is done. There is no looking back. And that's who he is. So I don't think that anything could have been done to even make the situation better, because he does not want to be better. Okay, and based off of what you have told us, how have you been able to get beyond what has happened to you? How have I moved forward? So at first, I really didn't tell anybody what was going on. I let him control the narrative, because that's really what he's always trying to do. He's always in the front of things, trying to control the narrative. That is why we end up getting married so quickly, because his exact statement is that he wants to control the narrative of how people are introduced to me. He doesn't want people to think anything else was going on, even though behind my back he was lying, telling people that we were together long before we were even together. And that already, I didn't know. I didn't half the stuff that he had been doing and saying about me, I did not find out until after after everything was done. So it's actually been pretty easy to move forward, because I already started detaching from the situation, like mentally, because I was mentally drained. While I was with him, my hair was falling out. I was gaining so much weight. I was just tired. I was getting sick. Once everything happened, I was able to really kind of refocus and honestly focus on myself and just get my feelings and emotions intact. And I was able to talk to other people, and that is how I was able to really move forward. Prior to me telling my story on YouTube, I had counselors that I had to talk to, friends that I finally came out and told them the truth about what was going on and what had happened to me. And that really helped me to heal and not become so bitter. That really, really helped me. So I don't know. To be honest with you, my life didn't skip a beat. I didn't let that trauma weigh me down. The only thing that I can say is that first you have to accept what has happened to you. Once you accept what has happened to you, you are able to process it, and you're able to take baby steps to move forward. That was the biggest thing for me, is just really accepting it and not letting it define who I am. Next, you have to get rid of the shame. Y'all, this story is not a glamorous story. This story is not something that I want to tell anybody, especially when I was going through it. My friends would look at me like, oh, you got yourself together. And I'm looking at them like, girl, I'm a hot mess. Like, you have no idea. But I'm putting on the smile. And it wasn't until maybe like maybe a little bit before the divorce, like that previous year, the end of the year, I was out to dinner with some friends, and they were talking, and of course they thought that was the most magnificent person. They were like, oh, my husband, I told my husband that he needs to smile at me the way that he smiled at you when you were coming down the aisle. Like you could just see the love. And they were saying this to me and we're talking. And usually when somebody would be talking like this, I would just smile and just like, yeah, okay, try to kind of nicely move on, move the story along or move the conversation along. And this time, I could not hold it back. I could not lie to them any longer. I could not put up a front. And so when they said it to me and they were going on, and I was just like, y'all, it's horrible. And they were just like, huh? And I was like, no, it's not good. And that was the first time I actually let it come out of my mouth that it was wrong. And what had happened to me, I still couldn't even tell them everything that had happened to me because they were still like, well, maybe you guys are just getting used to each other. Don't worry, blah, blah, blah. And I'm still holding back because I'm not telling them everything. And so it came to the point to when we were done and I actually told them everything. My one friend goes home to her husband and she's like, everything I said about you looking at me, the way that he looked at her, she was like, don't ever look at me like that. Don't ever look at me like that. And I'm like, listen, because he could fool you. He can really, really fool you. So that's, for the most part, that's how I have been able to move forward. I've been able to talk. You have to talk to people. You have to get it all out. You have to be able to accept the fact that this happened to me. Maybe I deserved it. Maybe I didn't deserve it, but it happened to me. There's a reason why I went through this. And that's something that has really helped me. In addition, I know that God saw everything. So when it comes to their story, your story, and that's the little part in between, that's the truth. I know that a lot of the stuff that happened to me, God saw it. And that's why I was like, you know what, God, you know what's happening. You are here. And if you're letting this happen to me, then there must be a reason why this has happened to me because you saw everything. So there's nothing that I feel like I'm coming forward, I'm telling what happened to me, and he's one that does like to say, oh, this is your truth. Oh, this is her truth. It's his way of saying, but not saying, like, this is my truth, this is her truth, like, that's her truth, like, it's not really what happened. That's his way. I've heard him say it several times when people have come against something that he has said, and I'm looking weird, like, but you told me, and he's like, well, that's their truth, babe. That's their truth. That's how they see things. It's all a part of his manipulative scheme. Whew. This is a lot, but we ready for part 3? So let me get my notebook so that I can be taking notes because I'm sure we will have more questions after part 3.